Hi, this is Guy Kent, the Questing Parson, and welcome to this edition of QP Interviews. Our guest today is Peter Wallace, who's connected with this organization called Day One, which will always be the Protestant Hour to me. But
and a lot of others.
Peter, what's your title, actual title?
Well, I have several. This is a small staff, so we all do everything here, but officially I'm Vice President of Programming for the Alliance for Christian Media, which is our parent organization, and then I'm Executive Producer of Day One.
Day One. Tell me how a little bit of your story. I know you're an author. You wrote the book Living Love, which
And thank you for your good review.
it was, I was very impressed with the book. It was, you ought to get his book just to get some sermon illustrations.
That's right, I've heard that before.
What brought you on this journey that brought you up here to end up in the All Saints Episcopal Church Facilities Episcopal Media Center in Atlanta, Georgia?
Well, it's a long journey that's taken a lot of paths. I was actually a preacher's kid. My father was a United Methodist minister in the West Virginia Conference for many years. My grandfather on my mother's side was a United Methodist minister. I'm very thankful for that background. My father was a fantastic preacher that I didn't really appreciate at the time, and I wish now that I had more recordings of his sermons. He was one of those who had three incredibly good points and used no notes and had a phenomenal voice. I wish I had his voice too, and just was a fantastic preacher. But in college, I think, I was raised in a good liberal Methodist home. But in college, I guess in an effort to find my own way, I kind of went conservative and got involved in a conservative campus organization. And that led me, although I had a journalism degree from Marshall University and actually worked for a newspaper called the West Virginia Hillbilly for 3 years after college, which was a blast. What I wanted to do was do communications work, writing and so forth in religion. So I had the kind of the communications part, but I didn't have the religion part. So I went to seminary in Dallas Theological Seminary, which is a well-known, excellent, but very conservative seminary, dispensationalist, but the Bible program was very good, learned Hebrew and Greek and all that. It was a 4-year program that I squeezed into 5. And I was married at the time. I had two children in Dallas, were born there. When I graduated, had an opportunity to come to Atlanta to work with Walk Through the Bible Ministries, which is an evangelical parachurch organization, but they still do, church seminars on the contents of the Bible, and they do daily devotional materials. And I came as the editorial director and oversaw the contents of 3 monthly devotional guides. That's where I got into the devotional writing part. We did the Daily Walk Bible. Then I worked with the president, who was Bruce Wilkinson at the time, the Prayer of Jabez. I didn't have anything to do with that, but used to do a lot of writing. We did video series, we did new magazines and so forth. But I began really feeling I was having kind of a crisis of faith, and the evangelical conservative answers to things was not hitting me well. I started trying different churches. I was involved in a very conservative church in Atlanta, but ended up in the Episcopal Church and felt totally at home the moment I walked in. It was night and day different experience in the worship. The rector there became a really good friend and mentor, Gray Temple. He's been on Day One, written books. So that started me kind of on a journey. I also came to a point where I couldn't stand working at Walk Through the Bible, and that was just me. I think I was going through a lot of questioning of what faith really was, and being called back to my roots, I think, my family roots and the theology that I was raised with. So I left Walk Through the Bible and began working for an ad agency in Atlanta as a senior copywriter and broadcast producer. Anytime we did ads or videos, I was the producer. And I was going to stay there for a year or two and figure out my next path. And I ended up staying there 11 years. It was a fantastic place. It was a small agency, a wonderful boss, Larry Smith. But at the end of 10 years, I was thinking, I really want to do something with my faith now in the mainline churches and communications. And I asked my rector, Gray Temple, and he said, you need to meet with Skip Schudig, who's the head of the Episcopal Media Center, and get some ideas. So Skip and I had lunch a couple of times, and then when this position came up at the Protestant Hour, he said, why don't you apply for that? And I said, I'd love to. I've known about the Protestant Hour since I was a kid, and got the job.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 7.5 years ago.
Let me ask you on this, my little tagline is looking for faith is where you find it.
Mm-hmm.
And I become concerned sometimes that people kind of get this notion that if they start questioning where they are in their faith journey, they're losing their faith. It sounds like for you it was the opposite.
Yeah, I think in my case, anytime I was in that place, and I was several times, I would become so stagnant and so restricted that to me the pushing and the questioning and the doubting, and I learned that a lot from the Episcopal church that I was in Great Temple, and you realize that your faith is strengthened in that pushing and questioning and doubting.
Right.
And that's kind of the type of thing I hope I accomplish in my writing, is to help the reader kind of bring up issues and questions and not give them answers like I used to be involved in. Here are the 3 steps toward,
Right.
perfection or whatever, but wrestle with this and talk about it and practice, what it means.
I remember as a young fella, I guess I was probably in my 20s, and our pastor of my home church, went off to some retreat, came back with the 4 spiritual laws, walked up in the pulpit and just started going and I remember sitting there, because it really affected everybody. They were getting it. And I remember sitting in the congregation and going, it's not that simple for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very disheartening that all of a sudden everybody had reduced my struggle down. If you just take these 4 steps, you've got the key to heaven.
Well, and that was my faith struggle when I was at Walk Through the Bible, and it was that everything was so simple and so black and white, and life was not. You couldn't force these things into real life. You could if you were in denial or, not realistic about what's going on or about yourself, and it wasn't working. So you have to do something, and I am very happy the path that I ended up on, and it's still moving around.
We're going to take a break now for a YouTube break. If you're on YouTube, go to part 2. If not, just enjoy the scenes and the music that follows, and we'll be back in just a moment.